I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Assisted reproductive technologies comes with a lot of risks. A lot. But that should not scare you away, frighten you, make you run for the hills, because we're going to cover them right here. Stick around. What's up? I'm Corlandos Scott, and I'm an attorney in Los Angeles who's dedicated his entire practice to assisted reproduction, helping you grow your family. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the risks of assisted reproductive technologies. First, we're going to talk about the huge medical risks associated with ART, and then we're going to look at the legal risks. Let's jump in. Anything dealing with medicine and science carries with it some level of risk, from taking a pain reliever to donating your eggs. Yeah, so there's no getting around risks of medicine or the medical risks in assisted reproduction. Let's look at surrogacy, for instance. In a surrogacy arrangement, there's a woman who is carrying a child for another parent or set of parents. And with that come all of the normal risks that are inherent to pregnancy. You don't get around the just normal risk of pregnancy because the baby you're carrying isn't your own. We also have just some of the other risks that are associated with IVF treatments in general. And when I talk about IVF treatments in general, this ranges from everything from stimulating medications that an egg donor or a woman who's undergoing IVF for herself would take, all the way to the transfer procedure of implanting an embryo into the mother or a surrogate in order to carry to full term. With that, we're looking at things like ovarian hyperstimulation. There's also perinatal risks. Unfortunately, ART isn't a 100% slam dunk for trying to grow your family, so there's also the risk of failure to conceive. One of the often talked about risks of IVF in general, and especially assisted reproductive technologies, is multiple pregnancies. That's a pregnancy consisting of more than one fetus. Twins, triplets, quadruplets, please no more than that. There's also no way around the risks of genetic abnormalities or genetic disorders. And there's also a risk that is coming to the public eye more and more lately, unfortunately, and that's the risk of mishandled gametes. What I mean by that is there's a risk that the embryology lab, or the fertility clinic that you're working with could mishandle your embryos. There have been a few cases in the last few years where one person's embryos were transferred to another person, and this other person had a baby that wasn't even theirs because there was a mix-up in the lab. So that's also a risk that you have to be aware of. All of these things are possible, and they shouldn't scare you away from the process, but they should also make you look into the professionals that you're working with, ask about their procedures, ask about the process, and become very familiar with the work that they do on your behalf. Another equally important risk that I would put under the medical risks are the mental health risks, the psychological risks. There are studies on the long-term effects psychologically for people who undergo IVF, even egg donors and surrogates. And so it's something to consider when you're looking at the health risks of assisted reproduction, not to forget the mental health component. And also under the category of mental health, there's the psychological effects for children born through assisted reproduction, whether that be from egg or sperm donation or surrogacy. There are several mental health professionals that opine on whether it's prudent to let the child know early in that child's life how they came to be and how they were born and the effort that it took their parents to bring them into the world. So that's something that you should definitely consider and think about prior to going through the process, so that when your beautiful baby is born, you've already thought through when and if to tell them how their life came to be. Next, we're going to talk about the legal risks, but before I do, make sure that if you're getting anything out of this, if you're enjoying this video, smash that like button. Let YouTube know to share this with some other people. Also, subscribe to the channel and click that bell so you can get alerts on whenever I update the channel and release new videos. So when we talk about the legal risks of the process, they are often tied to the medical component of the process, as well as the rights and the responsibilities of each of the parties that's engaged in whatever type of assisted reproductive technology they're engaged in. One of the legal issues is the concept of informed consent. When you go to that clinic to begin your assisted reproductive process, you're going to be signing some consent forms, and those consent forms are going to tell you what the clinic can do or the doctors will do or won't do. They're going to talk about things like how to dispose of your genetic material when you're finished using it. It's going to talk about what your rights are with regards to the donor or the surrogate, and you have to make sure that you're truly informed on what's going to happen rather than just signing on the dotted line and not really knowing what's in there. There's legal issues surrounding the medical process itself. One of the biggest issues that comes up in, let's say, surrogacy, for instance, is abortion and termination. There's definitely law on a woman's rights to her bodies, and as it stands right now, as the time of the creation of this episode, Roe versus Wade still stands, and a woman has the right to make decisions on what to do with her body. But that does not mean that if she agrees contractually to do a certain thing and deviates from that promise, she can't be contractually liable for violating her promise or for breaching the contract, as we say in fancy legal terms. So it's very important that one of the legal components that's covered in your contract with a surrogate is when and under what circumstances she could or would not terminate the pregnancy or abort or reduce the pregnancy. And since we're talking about legal contracts, let's just flesh it out a little bit more. There's going to be or should be or must be a legal contract between you and the surrogate if you're going through surrogacy, or you and the donor if you're going through a donation process that spells out everyone's rights and responsibilities. There should be no stone unturned. You don't want to leave anything to chance. You want to make sure that you get all of your I's dotted and T's crossed, and everyone is really clear on everything that's going to happen in the process from the very beginning. This is not something that you want to have to come back and try to fix later. Another legal risk in the process is the parent's rights to be a parent. One of the things to think about is, where are you doing your assisted reproduction process? Wherever you are has laws. That state, that jurisdiction, that location will probably have laws on assisted reproduction, or they may even be silent, and you have to understand that may pose a risk in and of itself as to whether you will be deemed the legal parent of a child born through assisted reproductive technologies. Now, something that you want to do is consult a legal professional in your jurisdiction so that you know if there's anything you need to do prior to starting the process, during the process, or after the process that will bear on whether or not you're deemed the legal parent of the child. This, I won't even say is a risk. This is a must do if you're growing your family in this way. Like Peter Parker's uncle told him, with lots of options comes lots of risks. Or maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was something about power and responsibility. But I like my way better. With lots of options, there's lots of risk. So think about when you're using the options of assisted reproduction that you also weigh the risks. If you're thinking about the surrogacy process, for instance, and you need to know how to do it right, make sure you click the link below for a free resource I have for you. It's my framework for how to navigate surrogacy. I call it the 3 T's to a successful surrogacy. And the first of the 3 T's is team. I'll let you click the link below and see what the other 2 are. But make sure you get your hands on this free resource, and I'll see you in the next episode.